So in this video, we are going to talk about other ways to multiply. So specifically, algorithms to multiply, simpler computations, multiplication by 10, two-digit factors, and lattice. Okay, so let's talk about simpler multiplication computations. Okay, so one is called, it's a concrete method with an array. Okay, so this is a concrete method. So I'm essentially going to take 15. So there's my 15. And again, this means I'm going to have 5 sets of that 15. So I'm going to have 5 sets of that 15. And then let's just add them up and see what I get. So, all those rods, remember each one has 10 in them, so that's going to be 50. And then over here, let's see how many we have here. We've got 5, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fives, right? So that's going to give me 25. So when we add it together, we get 75. So that is a very concrete way, using your base 10 blocks, to multiply 5 times 15. So here's another way. It's called partial products. It's an expanded algorithm. So this is where we take 15 and separate it into 10 and 5. And this is what a lot of people do when they do mental math, okay? 10 times 5. So I'm 10 plus 5, and I'm going to multiply each piece by 15. So I've got, and it doesn't really matter what order you do it in. You could say 5 times 5 and put your 25 there. And then 5 times 10 and put your 50 there. Or your students could do the 50 first and then the 5 times 5. Either way, you're going to get the same number, 75. Okay, that's called partial products. Our next one is called place value. So with our place value, you are literally going to multiply your tens by your 5. And then, so my 10s by my 5. Oh, I guess I started the other way. So I did my 5 by my 5 and got 25. And notice I did not regroup and trade or carry my 2. I didn't do that. I just wrote 25 out. Okay. Then I've got 5 times 10, which is 50. Where a lot of students mess up is right there. And you can imagine what most students do is they will just put a 5 there. Okay. But we don't. It should be 50 because it's not 5 times 1. It's 5 times 10 because of the place value. That 1 is in the tens place. So it's 10. And then we add those together and get 75. And then there's the standard method. I call it old school. And that is where you really do multiply 5 times 5 and regroup and trade, right? And then 5 times 1 is 50 plus 2. That's going to give me my 70. Okay. So I know a couple of those are new, so we're going to do a few more. Okay. 3 times 11. So we're going to have 3 groups of 11. So there's my 11, 1 rod and 1 unit, and I've got 3 sets of them. So my rods together is going to give me 30. And then I've got 3 units. And when you add them together, that gives me 33. I love this concrete method because your students will have already been playing with base 10 blocks for months, maybe even years before you get to the multiplication. So they're very familiar with that, and you will see some aha moments happening when you teach it that way. So your partial products, you're going to take that 11 and divide it into 10 and 1, right? 10 plus 1, and I multiply each piece by 3. So you could do it again, you could do get 30 first and then get the 3, or it doesn't really matter what order you do it in, right? But you're going to wind up with 33. Then my place value. So I'm going to have 11 times 3. So 1 times 3 is going to give me 3. again, the next one is the trap, okay? And that is because it is not 3 times 1, but it's a place value of 10, right? It's in the tens place. So it's 3 times 10, which will give you 30, and I'll get 33. And then old school method, I didn't have any regrouping to do on that, okay? Let's do one more. 4 times 22. So we are going to make a 22 block, and we're going to do it 4 times. So, that's not 22. Let me fix that. Okay, so there, that should be 22. All right, so got it. There's my 20, and there's my 2. So this should not be 40, right? So all of these are going to be, let me erase that. So that right there is going to turn into 80, right? 80, because I've got that each one of those is 10. And so I've got 8 of them, so it's 80. And then I have 8 here. So my final answer should be 88. All right. Let's see if I messed up on this one. Okay, so my partial products, 20 plus 2, right? Because 22 is 20 and 2. And I'm going to multiply it by 4. Again, it doesn't matter what order your students do it in, whether they do this one first or that one first, doesn't matter. They'll still get 88. That's called partial products when you divide it into 2 separate problems, essentially. And then my place value, I'm going to do 2 times 4 first, and that gives me 8. And then again, place value means this is going to be 20 times 4 rather than 2 times 4. That'll give me 80. And then I add it together and get 88. And then my old school method, I didn't have any regrouping and trading to do with that. Okay, so those are other methods to other algorithms that you can use for multiplication. So now we're going to multiply some 2-digit factors, okay? So notice all the ones we've done so far have been 1 digit times 2 digit. 1 digit times 2 digit. So now we're going to do 2 digit, 23 times 14. Okay, so first we're going to use our base 10 blocks. Okay, this, you could also use algebra tiles if you don't have base 10 blocks and you somehow have algebra tiles. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is do my 23. So notice this is a 10. This right there. There's a rod. There's a rod. So there's 20, and there's my 3. Right? So there's my 23. So up here is my 23. All right, and then down the side is 14. So there's my rod and my 4 units. Okay, and then I fill it in. Okay, so you would have your students actually put those 2 rods at the top, and put the 23 and then put the 13, and then just fill it in until it's completely full with that would give me a flat. So this flat here is going to be what, 10 times 10, that's 100, and another 100. So this right here is going to be 200. All right. When I fill this in, by filling it in, I mean I've got a unit here, but I've got a rod here, so I fill that completely full. So that's going to give me what up there? This group right there will be what, 30? That's 30. All right. Over here, I had a unit. So here's my unit. And on top was a rod. So I'm going to take that unit, I'm going to fill it in. So I add those until I realize that is going to be a rod. So I do that for each one of these four. So for this one, this one, this one, and this one, I had 2 rods up there. So I'm going to have, I'm going to fill that in so that this whole group down here is going to be what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 rods. So that gives me 80. And then the last one, notice I had 3 units up here and 4 units here. So that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 when I fill those in. So that gives me 12. So if I added all those together, I would have 200 plus 30 plus 80 plus 12. So that's going to give me 322 if I add all those up, okay? Now, if I do partial products, I would get the same thing, okay? So let's look at the partial products, and we're going to do some more partial products. It's really, it could also be called place value. So that's this down here, the place value. So it's a good thing to look at, okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply those. Whoops, I meant to do it in highlighter. Let's do 3 times 4, and that's going to give me my 12. Okay, and then I'm going to still keep with my 4, but I'm going to say 4 times 20, right? And it's 20 because that 2 is in the tens place. All right, so that's going to give me, that's how I got my 80. Whoops, that's how I got my 80 right there. Okay, now I'm going to use my tens. Okay, so let me erase these guys. And so now I'm going to use this 1, but that's not a 1, it's a 10, right? So it's a 10 times a 3. So that, oh, I should use a different color. So it's my 10 times my 3. Let's use green. So that's my 10 times my 3, and that's how I get my 30. And then this is the one that most people miss, okay? Because notice it's going to be, let's do gray. It is going to be a 10. That's not showing up very well. It's going to be a 10 times a 20. And a lot of people say 1 times 2 and put a 2 there, or they'll get the 10 right, but say 10 times 2 and put a 20 there. But it's going to be 200. Okay, then you add all those together and you get that 322. So these partial products, which we also can call place value, multiply using place value, it directly comes from this concrete model. Okay, so you could take this concrete model and have them work multiple problems, and then they take the concrete and move it to partial products. And then this leads to the old school method. Okay, so the old school method where you said 4 times, you know, with your old school, you said 4 times 3 and got 12 and carried your, I'm going to say it, carried your 1, and then 4 times 2 and got 8, and then added 1 and got the 9. That's 92. Notice that's these guys right there. And then we're going to go ahead and do the tens. Okay, so we multiply that 1, and you know, in old school, you just said, well, just put a 0 there. Put a 0 and then multiply 1 times 23. Okay, and students forgot. They either forget to put a 0 or that's just the rule. The rule is you just stick a 0 there. Why? The reason why is you are not multiplying by a 1, right? You are multiplying by a 10. It's in the tens place. So you're really saying 10 times 23 instead of 1 times 23. So that's the why for the 0 there. Then you just add it. Okay. So let's do some place value. Place value, again, is also sometimes called partial products. Okay. And it comes out of this concrete model that we did right there. Okay. So let's do my place value. So I'm going to have 25 times 17. So my first step is going to be my 7 times my 5. So that gives me 35. Notice I did not regroup and trade or carrier 1 or carrier 3. We didn't do that. Okay. Then we're going to do the same thing with my 7, but this time I'm multiplying my 7 by 20, not 2, but 20. So I get 140. Notice I did not regroup and trade or carry a 1. All right. All right, next. Let's see if I can get rid of the greens. Good. Okay. So next we're going to multiply my tens. We're going to do the tens place. So 10 times 5, that's going to give me that 50. Okay. And then the last one, again, this is the one most people miss on your test because it's 20 times 10. 10 times 20. And then you add them all up and get 425. Okay. And again, when you get 425, we're actually in this portion, when you add all that up, that's really 22, right? Whoops, that's 22. So you could think, I need to put that, whoops, sorry, not a 2. I need to put a 1 up there because it was, it, it winds up, oh, I'm sorry, not 22. It's 12. Winds up being 12. So that's going to give you 425. Let's do another one. Okay. So the next one is 31 times 14. So the first one I'm going to do, I'm going to multiply 4. So 4 times my 1. So that just gives me 4. Then the next one is 4 times 30. Not 4 times 3, but 4 times 30. So you should get 120, not just 12, but 120. So I'm done with my 4s. So I can check it off. Okay, so next I'm going to deal with my 10, or that 1 in the tens place. So that's going to be 10 times 1. So that gives me 10. And then the one that most students miss, which is the 10 times 30, which is going to give me 300. So I add all that together. I add the 4. So I'll just put the 4 down. Then I add the 2 and the 3. 2 and the 1 and get 3. And then 1 and the 3 and get 4. Let me do 2 more. What most people miss with this is they wind up doing just 3 of them. They'll leave 1 of them off, okay? But if you have 4 numbers, you're going to have 4 places down there, okay? So 47 times 25. So 47 times 25, I'll do the 5s first. Again, you don't have to do the 5s first. You can multiply by, this 20 right here. You could do the 20s first. It doesn't matter. But I would highly suggest with your students that you teach it one way or the other. Don't go back and forth. Okay. So notice I'm starting with my 5s. I'm always starting with the 1s, the place value of the 1s. You don't have to do that. But whatever you start with, you want to do it that way consistently so you don't confuse your students. Okay, so 5 times 7 gives me 35. Then 5 times 40 is going to give me 200. So I'm now done with the 5. So now I'm going to work on the 20, right? 20 times 7, and it's a 20 because the 2 is in the tens place. So that gives me 140. And then 20 times 40 gives me 800. And then I add those together. All right, last one. 42 times 38. So 42, I'm going to start with the 8 because that's what I've decided I'm going to do with you guys. That's totally up to you. But 8 times 2 gives me 16. And then I'll do 8 times 50, right? So that's going to give me 400. So now I'm done with my 1s. So now I'm going to go to my 10s place. So 30 times 50, 30 times 2 gives me my 60. And then finally, 30 times 50 gives me 1,500. That one, I'm going to circle because that one is missed a lot. I get a lot of 150s because you're just not used to writing a number that big. Anyway, then you add them all together. And that gives you 1976. So that's called the place value method. So on your test, I will ask you to multiply using the place value method and show your steps. Okay. So now we're going to use the lattice method. Now we've done the lattice method for addition. Do you remember what the advantage of using lattice in addition was? Yeah, your order doesn't matter. So it is the exact same in the lattice method for multiplication. Order does not matter. But notice how my lattice is set up. There's my 23 and my 37. Completely different than addition. You don't have to write this in your notes. But remember, this was what your addition one looked like. Completely different. So when you do the lattice method, you've got to know how to set up your lattice. Okay. So for multiplication, it's going to be in between all your numbers. Okay. It's like sort of like the area model, if you want to think of it sort of that way. Not really, but it's a box. Okay. Whereas with addition, your box goes at the bottom. So with addition, your lattice goes at the bottom. With multiplication, it's in between. Okay. So now we're going to multiply these numbers together. Okay. So here we go. So, and it doesn't matter. Let's see, I'm going to skip around. 2 times 3 gives me 6. So I'm going to put a 6 here, but notice there's no tens. So I put a 0 in there. Okay. Now I'll do 3 times 3. That's going to give me 9. And again, I have no tens in there. Now I'll do 3 times 7. So that's going to give me 21. And then let's see. Last is 2 times 7, which is 14. Okay. And then our lattice works the same. We're going to go diagonally. So that gives me a 1. Now let's go diagonally this way. Okay, so when I add that together, 9 plus 2 gives me 11, plus 4 more gives me what, 15? So I'm going to write 15. I'm going to put the 5 here, and I'm going to put the 1 up there. So you can think of it, I hate to say carry the 1 because we're not saying that anymore, but we're regrouping, okay, and trading. All right, and then next we're going to, let's go ahead and go this way. So that's going to give me what, 8? 8. And I could do this one, but I don't have anything there. So my answer is going to be 8,517. Oh, not 17. Goodness gracious. Okay, 851. Can you tell it is late when I'm doing this? Okay, let's do another one. So 54 times 39. So 54 times 39. Let's go ahead and fill in our little boxes. Again, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. I'll do 4 and 3 is 12, and 5 and 3 is 15. And then let's do 4 and 9. That's going to give me 36. And last, 5 and 9, and that's going to give me 45. All right, so let's go ahead and do my lattice. So I'm going to come down this way. So that's going to give me a 6. Let's do the next one, maybe green. So when I add all those together, I get what, 10? So I'll put a 0 and then put that 1 up there. Let's do it again. Down this way. So that's 1 and 1 is 2, plus 5 is 7, plus another 4 should give me what, 11? And then last, what color have I not used? I haven't used red. Go that way. Oops. I'll just use green again. It's okay. All right. So my answer, there's my answer, 1,106. It should be 2,000. Sorry, 2,106. All right. Last one. Notice this one has more numbers, so we're going to have more boxes. Okay. All right. So let's go in. 7 times 2 is 14. There we go. So 14. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 2 again is 6 again. And then 7 times 4 is 28. Again, you can skip around, but if you have, you probably will want to do it the same way each time. Say you can skip around, but do it the same way each time, just so your students don't get confused. I've sort of been skipping around. But anyway, all right, so I've got all my boxes filled in, and now I can do the lattice part. And I'm just going to do it without all the colors to show you what it might look like. I'll use gray like it's a pencil. So that's going to give you 8. That one's going to give me 8. See how I'm making it an arrow? So you could do it that way if you want. If you don't have lots of colors or don't want to use lots of colors. So that's going to give me 10. So I'm going to carry my 1. And then this comes down, and that's going to be an 8. And then that's just a 0, so we don't have to use that one. So your answer should be 8,088. Okay, we're not going to be multiplying in other bases. We could, but no, we are not going to do that. Okay, so we're almost finished. We're going to talk about mental math. We're going so that we can multiply in our head. Okay, so mental math, we're going to do front end multiplication, which is it's like your place value. Okay, and then we're going to use compatible numbers. Okay, so my front end multiplication, um, again, it's similar to place value or partial products. So we are going to, the key is we're going to do our tens first. Okay, that's why it's called front end, right? The front end of this is my tens. Okay, so we're going to do the tens first, then the ones, then add them up. Okay, so first one, we're going to do 55 times 4. So we're doing the tens first. So that's my 50. So I'm doing this guy first. All right, and then we're going to do 5 times 4. So we'll get 20 and add it together. So 220. So let's do the next one. So 25 times 8, we're going to do the tens first. Okay, so that's 20 times 8. And then 8 times my 5, or 5 times my 8. So that's going to give me 40. So that gives me 40 for my answer, 200 for my answer. 28 times 3. So which ones are we going to multiply first? The 3 and the 70. Yes, we're going to do the tens first. So that's going to give me 210. And then the 3 times the 8 is going to give me 24. Add them all up and get 234. Okay. Now, these last two are a lot harder because we forget. Okay, right? So when you have 4 numbers up there, you're going to have 4 spots. So again, we've got 25 times 35. So first, let's start off with the 30. Okay, so 30 times 20. So I did my tens first, both of the tens. 30 times 20. Now I'm going to do 30 times 5. Okay, so I'm doing my 30 first. So I did my tens first. Now I'm going to do the 5. So now I've got 5 times 5, which gives me my 25. And then 5 times my 20. So that total will give me 875. Okay, notice again, you've got 4 numbers here. Okay, again, most people miss it. They leave one out, and usually it's that one. That's usually the one that gets left out. Okay, last one, 15 times 23. We're going to do the 20s first, the 10s first. So 20 times 10 will give me 200. Then we're going to do 20 times 5. So that's going to give me 100. Now I'm going to do the 3. And you can either do 3 times 5 first, or you can do 3 times the 10. Either way. And then I just add them together and get 345. So that's called front end multiplication. And this is supposed to be mental math. Okay. So a lot of people can do these guys mentally. Doing those mentally is pretty difficult because you've got to keep you've got to keep these 4 numbers in your head. Okay. But some of your students will be able to do it. Obviously not as late as I'm doing it. Anyway, okay, so we're almost finished. Let's talk about compatible numbers. So this is a way that you can just rearrange, because multiplication, we said that it is commutative. So you can move these numbers around. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, you know what? I don't want to multiply 2 times 4. They say multiplication and division left to right, okay? And so, but all of these are multiplication. So you can do them in any order. So instead of saying 2 times 4 and getting 8, and then 8 times 5 and getting 40, and then 40 times 25, I don't know what that is. Let's group the ones that make sense. So 2 times 5, well, that's going to give me 10. That's a really easy one to group, right? And then I'm going to group this one. I meant to do it in a different color. Sorry about that. So I'm going to group the 4 and the 25, because 4 times 25, that gives me 100. And then I just have my 8. So when you do that, you've got 10 times 100, which is 1,000, times 8, and that gives me 8,000. It's a lot quicker, okay? Now, you may be teaching your kids to go left to right, okay? So if you want to teach them to do that, and that's okay. But as a teacher, you're going to need to be able to get to the answer really quickly, right? So you may not have taught them how to use compatible numbers. It's a great concept to teach them, but you absolutely will be using it in your classroom yourself to do mental math. Okay, so let's talk, what numbers would you group together? There's a few that I see. So personally, I would group that 5 and the 2 together. And that's a 10. I like tens and hundreds, so I try and find those first. So that was my 10. That gave me my 100. And then I've got a 3, right? So 10 and 103, so that's going to give me 3,000. Okay? Again, I like to group my hundreds and my tens as much as I can. So I grouped the greens. I grouped this one. That made 100. And that made 100. So I've got 100 times 100. Well, that's got 4 zeros, right? So that's really 10,000 times 7. So that's going to give me 70,000. So you will be using grouping compatible numbers together. Even if you're not teaching it, it's a great concept to quickly get an answer, even if you have your students do it another way. So that is the end of this section. The next section will be on division.